Hi, welcome to Microsoft Dynamics. I'm Miker. Today we are going to be replacing the coil and pickup on a 1978 Mercury 550 horsepower 4-cylinder 2-stroke engine. So some of the tools we're going to go over here is you're going to need a flywheel puller, very important, 22 millimeter socket to run the flywheel puller, 24 millimeter socket to pull the flywheel bolt, and 10 millimeter for the timing mark, and a 4 millimeter Allen to pull the bolts out of the pickup. First, we'll start by removing the cover. We can just gently set this inside the back of the boat. Same thing with the top cover. Once again, gently in the back of the boat. We'll use our flywheel puller here after we've rattled off the nut with our cheater gun. Flywheel puller goes in here because it's externally threaded on the end of a flywheel. You run this down and it presses the flywheel up and off. But before you get to that point, as I'm making the mistake again here that I did earlier, you got to use the 10 mil to pull this timing mark out of here. And it's keyed so that it always stays where it's supposed to. These guys are plastic, be very careful not to break them. We'll set that aside for now. So we'll use the puller to remove the flywheel. Oh, and there's our stator that I didn't bolt back in once I put this back together to shoot this video for you. But anyways, we'll set the flywheel aside. This should sit like this if you haven't already unbolted it and thrown it all over the place. There's, on mine, 4 Allen head socket cap screws. So be very careful. These may have corrosion in them. I wire brushed these out real well before I pulled them back out so that we didn't break anything or get the socket stuck. But you get those loose, this comes out. And then underneath you have your pickup. And your pickup is loose as well. Assembly is connected by an arm, so you have to, this is all threaded together, both ends over here. So we're going to pull this guy and then see if we can't thread this back under that, this looks like the end cap for the crank. So we're not going to remove this today. It's held on there by old school brass nylock. Just gently remove that. Careful not to lose the bushing. And just set it aside for right now. I'm going to go ahead and try and remove this guy from its threaded mounting there by using some creative movement. Or you come around this way, come back over here, swing that back over to the side, and then continue to rotate this out of there to unscrew it. So I need that linkage free to be able to maneuver the pickup out of that space. It's kind of awkward. Now that I got that guy out of there, we're going to set it aside in the pile of parts. And we're going to very carefully work this out of this space. I think we can do, but I may need to work out angles and whatnot to get this out of here. Okay, so what works best for me here is I tuck this guy up underneath the little armature here, and then that'll let you get enough space to roll that and pry it through. Careful not to smash anything here. Through the space by the bolt here. About like so. And you can kind of see the reason we are replacing all of this is because on these old engines that happens and these just kind of disintegrate. So I'm gonna go ahead and spend some time here chasing these wires down, disconnect where they're going to, leave it all comes around here to the this side. It controls timing of who's on first for firing what spark plugs. So get this all taken apart and do those. I hit everything in here gets hit with penetrating oil before I pull it apart, except for the stuff that's under the caps because those are still in pretty good condition. Some of these are hand loose though, so we'll see. These guys definitely not so much. They're all 3/8 drive, and I'm using the 5-point because I like a little extra grip. And then these guys save you all kinds of time if you have something to stick it to, but only if the hardware you're working with is magnetic. Everything else, there is the trusty shop towel. So the pickup here looks like it was just 4 wires into this guy, which I think is the, not sure, distribution block for something. But it definitely has the pickup for all 4 cylinders here. And then you've got all these different colors of wire for your stator, which is what we're replacing today. And a lot of these, if you just pull that cover off, they've just been hand loose for all of these guys. So these guys look like they're a little tighter, which is good. But I really like how these rubber caps keep everything nice and clean. So, moving on. All right, so now that I've got all these guys undone, I want to thread this back up through here. It's held in by this guy, so we'll remove this. And I think this also holds a lot more together there than meets the eye. And oh my, looks like I'm missing a ground on the back end there somewhere, so we'll have to figure that out. This probably goes up to here if I was to guess, but it's also got a thick ground over there too, so maybe not. Maybe this goes to the block back there somewhere. I don't know. We'll have to dive in and take a look-see. But that gets this guy free, which means I can pull this off of here, remove this assembly. We'll throw the new one on there, thread it through, and begin putting it back together. So part of the reason I'm doing this is the replacing the whole wiring harness, not just these components. So maybe I won't throw that back together just quite yet because I still have to get all that out of there and thread that all the way through there, and then remove the plug on the inside down there somewhere. And I'm really hoping I don't have to pull too much out to get to it, but maybe pull this guy to get access to where this this wiring loom runs back in here, to be able to replace the harnessy bit down at the bottom there. But as you can see, I really need new wires, and that's why we're doing all this. We'll pull this screw out of here. Very careful not to strip it because these are screws and this guy's really stuck, so I don't want to chance it. Hoping this component's still good. If not, it's only 2 days away on Amazon. So I'm going to get these guys all out of here, and then this is loose. I'm going to try and pull this guy down here, which is below the cowling there, so I'll have to get a box end wrench in there. I'll get this guy out of here. Might be able to get away with not pulling this guy, but at the same time, maybe just easier. Because I've got to replace all of this anyways, all the way up over here. The starter solenoid, ground's just falling apart everywhere. Yeah. So we'll see how far I get. All right, so a very important part here. I'm looking at this wire here and where this goes. It runs up here to that terminal, and that terminal then runs all the way up to this blue guy right here. And this is a mercury switch, which grounds the ignition and kills the engine. So if this is faulty or bad, it won't let the engine run. The idea is this is a tilt switch, and as you bring the motor up, that tilts, and liquid mercury in here floats up to the top, connects the contactors, grounds out your ignition. So instead of replacing this, I'm just going to remove it because I would rather not have to fight with this than just have a working boat motor. If I want it to go off, I'll turn the key off, and that will kill, the ignition. So it'll be fine. So working principle on these mercury switches here is you have your 2 contactors, liquid mercury in the vial, and as it floats to the other end, it makes the circuit. So that's what that mercury switch does. So we're running into some minor details here. I can't get that bolt out of there because we run into the housing here. And there's not enough play to get that bolt far enough back that it will just lift up and out. So we are going to do other things, such as pull the starter. So pulling the starter, get the bottom 2 bolts out, and then this whole little bottom assembly kind of drops off and out of the way, like this. And we're going to set this aside, so we get it out of there, like that. And that looks like that just sits in there. So then I think the next part is we're going to pull this guy out of here as well. Not sure if this is going to change how this sits and the engagement of the flywheel. We'll check all that when we put it back together. We're going to go ahead and pull this part off. So we pulled the starter wiring off of here, positive off the bottom of the starter solenoid. We're going to pull the rest of this off of the starter and remove the starter. Part of the retaining tab for this guy is this bolt for grounding and whatnot and holding the extra support there. It's definitely a 7/16, so we're going to go ahead and pull that guy off. I might need to hold the guy on top to pull it out, so we'll see. So the upper starter mount looks like it's keyed. That's suspension, so it's a motor mount. So that came off of there pretty easily. Now we'll see about getting the starter out of here. Should be as easy as pulling it right out of the spot. So I'll take that. Cool. Look at all that room for activities. Now I just got to get that plug out of there for the wiring harness and go from there. So, real exciting development. I fiddled with that guy enough that it just kind of fell out of there, and all of that came loose. So now we have a lot more room for activities. I'll get that up there. We can pull the bolt out, release the wiring harness ground, it looks like, the clamp for the igniter harness, and this ground over here. We will be very careful not to lose any of this hardware. So we're going to go ahead and stash this guy with the other 4 bolts that held this assembly in. Whoa, more space for activities. So looking in here with the flashlight, it looks like these guys are just doubled over right there. So we're going to try and unplug that assembly. I'm hoping it just comes out easy, but you know how these old projects go. Alright, so I pulled the 2 retaining bolts out of there, and this just pops loose like that, and then one would hope that it would just pry back into the space easy enough so we can swap it out of there. Not too worried about this because I'll get a new one. And go from there. But we shouldn't crack the plastic piece. Get out of there. Not quite. Yeah. Perfect. So we'll just set that aside and continue to pry. As it turns out, a little light percussive maintenance, and got it right out. Now, theoretically, this should just theoretically, yes. Well, you know what they say. Reality is often disappointing. I have to try and finagle that out of there. About like so. Yeah! Successful finaglage. And there's what's left of that harness. So, not good. Thankfully, the new one is in the mail. So, this line in here is broken down there, and I kind of want to replace it while I'm in here. So I pulled this guy off of here. It's just 2 bolts. 7/16. Yeah, 7/16. So pretty easy to get to. And then we kind of go from there. We'll clean this out while we're in here and prep it for new wiring harness and other stuff. So here we've got it all stripped down. Wiring harness is all out. All this space for working on stuff. Here's the old harness. It's kind of a mess. And this is why we are replacing it. So these wires are just falling apart. This is the new harness. The mount bracket's a little bit different. It doesn't have the spring coil on there for grippage, but we'll get her in there and see how it goes. Proudly assembled in the USA. This is a CDI Electronics kit, and all of this stuff I actually got here is CDI Electronics. So, because they seem to be the only folks that reliably have parts that are electrical for 1970s boat motors. So I've got this loosely mounted in here, this bracket. I'm not super thrilled with how tightly I'm going to have to make this corner with these guys, but I'm going to try and very carefully tuck them back into this space down here. Just there's not much space, but we're going to try and tuck it in here, run it along underneath where the distribution box will go, and under the starter to get the ground here and the positive there. Thankfully, I've got plenty of cable to do it with. Maybe if I can fit the distribution box in there, I will leave these up and over the top and figure that one out if I've got the space. But I just don't like the idea of doing that with brand new wiring, because it just doesn't seem right. But we'll see. Alright, so putting the pickup back in here, we've already threaded these guys. Already threaded these guys through here. And now angles to get this guy in here to be just right. Kind of sucks, but let's see here. Get this kind of pointed down like so. Wiggle a little bit. It should just drop through there. If I get my angles correct here. Just about like that. Of course, I did it off camera, and now I can't do it on camera. There we go. You have to have this kind of on a level plane. It goes through there like so. Then you can rotate it up and over top of this drive shaft here. And then to get that to get past that bolt, same thing. Kind of finagle it until it pops through. And it just sits in there like that. And now since that's the pickup, here I'm thinking about timing. And then I remember this is all connected by a linkage. And then I think, oh, I need the little insert for the linkage. Well, that isn't going to fit. So we're going to have to figure something out. And so we come back over here to the box, and a quick review of the box finds. They've got adapters. Cool. So a couple different sizes of adapter. What we want to see is which one of these adapters fits the linkage, and videoing and using two hands is not going to work out here, but either way, there's linkage. One of these things is not like the other. We probably want the smaller hole because that's what that's going to fit into. This guy goes in there, so that one doesn't. This is going to work. Get out of there. This guy right there. So, anyways, I'll thread that on there. Make sure it's the adapter's plastic, whereas the old one was metal. So I've got to be real careful not to strip the threads that are already in here because these come pre-threaded. I'll just very gently run that through there and make sure the threads are clean before we put this adapter into the new pickup, and then attach the linkage that will then connect to the I think this is the throttle arm. So this little adapter, while it looks intuitive that you could just slide this guy up in there like so and then be all good, my concern is that it would fall out. So it fits real snug in the top, so we're going to snug that in there first, and then we'll thread this in with it in place with kind of that janky wiggle maneuver, which is why I think they left a wide space here to be able to swivel this side to side while you're tightening the linkage. Shoop. And you still have access to the threaded piece there, I think. We'll see if it's enough clearance, but go from there. So it does fit, and to thread the thing you've got to be janky, which is why there's the cutout. You swap back and it clears this space. Swap it back over there, clears that space, which, all things considered, I am kind of freaking amazed by this. That is geek stuff right there. Totally nerding out on how this was engineered. So cool. Alright, so I've got that thing all threaded up in there. It won't go a full turn, so we backed it off to where it'll reach the linkage arm here. I'm going to take this guy off of here, this bushing, and we will clean this up so it's nice and smooth on both sides. It's a little plastic bushing, so I really don't want to damage it. But we're going to clean the metal shaft it rides on, and then we'll clean the bushing up real well, and the hole it's going to go back into. It'd probably add a little bit of some kind of grease of some sort so that it moves smoothly. So this little piece is actually threaded, and it looks like it had some anti-seize on there before, so we cleaned the threads up, and we're going to reapply anti-seize before we put it back together. So, buttery smooth. Doesn't tighten any more than that though, so we'll just leave it one turn out and put that back together like that. So I got a little excited here and may have overzealously applied the stator without snagging some video, but either way, I put it back on here, and this is how it looked like it was routed when it came out. So this is the new one. I put anti-seize on all four of these socket cap screws, and we'll it seats pretty well. It doesn't seem to rock too much. This is still free to move around as the pickup, so that should be good. And we'll go ahead and tighten these guys down, and I'll probably leave this open until the last, once I get all the wiring hooked up, before we go ahead and put the flywheel back on. and then we'll just kind of see how it goes from there. But that's just really pretty, brand new wiring. All right, so we're going to kind of pivot here. We've got 2 ground straps that go on this lower guy onto the switch box, along with the cable holder for all of our, these are what, igniters, the triggers for the igniters. I get those guys on there, and these guys also have a ground strap. That's where I think my extra ground strap came from. I think, yeah, this guy will go up here and jump from here to there, and then we'll go from there. But that actually may be this guy, because he's already on there, and I'm not sure where I pulled that off of, because that's how these things go. But we'll see. So the way this guy is bent leads me to believe that this is the one that goes up in here, like so. And then the other one that I have on here, because the way it's bent, will probably go here. And then I think this is the loose one that I found, and this was supposed to bolt to something back there. I think we'll probably just go ahead and bolt it to the starter clamp there, and call that our block ground, and go from there. So I want to start dressing up wires. Some of these are going to be way too long, but I don't want to do any of that until I get the mechanical bits back together, so I know exactly what space I have to work with, which means this guy goes back in. And at this point, I'm just putting anti-seize on everything I'm putting back in here, just to make sure that if I ever have to get in here again, it'll be easy to remove all of the bolts, and I won't have to worry about anything snapping. And yeah, good times. So I found that it helps if you lift the starter just a little bit to make sure these guys stay loose, so that you can get them in there hand tight and turn them by hand. And then before I cinch that all down, I want to get the top in there and then clock the starter. I'm not sure how much that really makes a difference, but make sure it's pointed in the direction I want before I button this all up. And remember, this guy's keyed, so you've got the little square piece goes with the square bolt, you know, round peg, square hole, that kind of thing. And then we will start doing wiring. Okay, so this is with all the wiring in and tightened down. All of these I tightened with the this guy, hand tight, because we're working with 3/8 brass nuts on those posts, and I don't want to shear them off. The good thing is these are only about 30 bucks on Amazon, and then same thing with this rectifier. It's only about 15-20 bucks on Amazon. So if either one of these don't work properly, or I accidentally fry it by putting 12 volts on the kill wire to the switch box, as is indicated by the instructions here, it says DC voltage present on the kill circuit for the switch box will break your switch box. So me being young and foolish, we're gonna just go ahead and send it, instead of tearing this all apart and then flipping the key on and off and seeing if there's 12 volts in there. And then I will spend the $30 for a new one, because at that point something will either be wrong with the boat side harness or the controls, because everything in here is brand new, and this is how it's supposed to be hooked up per instructions and per the directions on this guy. And this is going to be like 300 bucks anyways, so we'll go from there. I might do some continuity testing between these posts on both sides of this harness to make sure our battery wires aren't shorted somewhere here inside the boat harness. Among other things, I want to look up the pin out for this guy and do more continuity testing with the switches on and off. But this is ultimately where everything goes. Gray wire on the harness goes to the electric solenoid. I don't have a tack on this boat, so this is just taped off. Starter solenoid wiring, yellow and black on those terminals. Originally, the ground strap here, looking at the earlier videos, this was down here, but since I've moved it up here, and because of how long the power wires were off this new wiring harness, I ended up routing this black one negative all the way behind the switch box and down, just to keep it from rubbing on all kinds of things. Same thing with the red guy here. It is doubled over pretty good, but not as bad as the other one was. There's still space down there for it to wiggle around, and that's all connected. So I'm going to throw the flywheel back on here real quick, and then kind of go from there, do some pickup, and like I said, continuity testing, and we'll see what happens, and then we'll see about getting a battery, see if it turns. All right, I threw the flywheel back on, wiring harness is all hooked up, test battery's good to go. give this a shot. That's pretty cool, man. Let's get some muffs or a bucket and see if we can fire it up.